Welcome to Passing the Plate, the podcast that's all about food, traditions, and the wonderful connections they create. I'm Lisa Lisson, the genealogist and family history expert behind Are You My Cousin?
And I'm Ashley Covelli, the food writer and recipe developer behind Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen. We'll be your guides on this flavor-packed adventure. We're not just talking about recipes. We're diving into family history, exploring new cultures, and preserving favorite recipes for future generations. In short, we're celebrating the stories and tastes that come with every bite.
So grab a seat at the table and let's embark on a journey of flavor, tradition, and connection. This is Passing the Plate, where every episode is a feast for the senses and a celebration of the ties that nourish our souls. Today we are talking about recreating those dishes you've enjoyed at a restaurant or local coffee shop, but right in your own kitchen.
Lisa, have you ever had a dish out at a restaurant that you've tried to recreate at home?
Does a cookie count?
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely love chocolate chip cookies. No surprise there. And we are big fans of Levain's chocolate chip cookies from our visits and trips up to New York City and going to their bakeries. So yes, absolutely. We have tried to recreate that cookie and done a pretty good job of it, if I do say so myself.
How did you go about trying to make it at home?
Okay. So since remember, I'm the historian, you're the the recipe developer. I Googled a copycat recipe online. And you would actually be surprised at how many copycat recipes there were for that particular cookie out there. Part of it, to be honest, had to do with the technique. And so there was a little bit of a technique in there that I hadn't done before with chocolate chip cookies, because these are massive chocolate chip cookies.
It's like a meal.
Yeah, it goes, and when you look at it on the tray in the bakery, they look like the size of a softball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but I mean it's a solid round ball. But I could never really kind of get mine looking like that. My chocolate chip cookies were more the traditional, just kind of flat kind.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of what we had to do. But in general, I don't feel like I'm particularly skilled at analyzing a dish that I taste, whether it's a cookie, whether it's a main dish, to really analyze the nuances of that dish to know how to recreate it. It's like I know if I taste it again, I'll like it, but I don't know how to really think through what a spicing might be unless it's a very obvious spice, say like cinnamon that we just talked about in our previous episode.
Well, I think copycat recipes are a great place to start when you're looking to recreate something that you've had elsewhere. And yes, there are tons, especially for like big chain restaurants like Starbucks, Cheesecake Factory, things like that. Like there's a lot of options out there, so you can kind of experiment. I think there's also cookbooks, like copycat cookbooks out there. A lot of restaurants and bakeries also have cookbooks with the recipes they use. I know there's a place called Alice's Teacup in New York City that's like this Alice in Wonderland themed tea house. It's adorable. They have a few locations, and I have their cookbook. But do be warned that when you're getting a recipe from a cookbook from a restaurant, so a restaurant and their chef gives out their recipes, they're not always giving you exactly what they're doing. So even like if, say, like Tyler Florence, even the recipe he uses in his restaurant might be different than what he shows on his cooking show, might be a little bit different than what's on his website, might be a little bit different than what's in the cookbook. So it'll get you close, but maybe not exactly there. And not everybody wants to give out all of their secrets, but it'll get you in the ballpark at least.
I hadn't thought about that, but it actually makes sense. Again, probably don't want to give out all their secrets, and would some of that have to do with, say, making the recipe for more the home cook as opposed to in a restaurant if they're cooking for a larger number of people or different equipment, basically, in the kitchen perhaps than a home kitchen. So.
Well, yeah, and also sometimes those restaurant chefs aren't necessarily thinking with the home cook in mind, and they have things to a scale that you would never, I'm not cooking for 50 people. And so sometimes I think they forget that when scaling back to make it a little more reasonable for home cooks. So, yeah, there's definitely good places to start, or if you say you don't necessarily want a copycat of exactly the strawberry cheesecake with chocolate crust that you had at a restaurant, but you could say, oh, let me see if there are any recipes either online or in cookbooks for a strawberry cheesecake with a chocolate crust. And you can kind of see, well, oh, this looks like it might be a little similar, or maybe the one part of it from one recipe looks kind of right, and then another recipe, and you can kind of mash them together.
That makes sense, actually. I like that. Well, now I know that you were telling me recently about a balsamic vinaigrette that you had
Mm-hmm.
had from a favorite restaurant and that you actually went home and created. Now, I've got to tell you, I'm always on the lookout for a good balsamic vinaigrette recipe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I would love to know how you went about recreating that at home. What was start start with really what is your process from the moment of tasting it? What is your process when you're thinking, I want to recreate this at home?
With that particular recipe, it was probably over a decade ago, so I don't remember what my thought process was half the time when I walk into a room. So, I'm not sure 100% what my process was there, but I will say, um, just starting off, you can ask, depending on the restaurant, they might tell you what they put in there. So, thinking to a more recent experience, my husband and I went to a Spanish restaurant and I thought it was odd that they had cannoli on the menu, the dessert menu. I'm like, well, that's not very Spanish. And it was like the name was like somebody's famous cannoli. And I'm like, okay. So my husband ordered that for dessert. And it came out and they looked like kind of like a waffle cone. So it was the cannoli shape, but it was like a waffle cone. And it had this filling. And I tasted the filling and I was like, that tastes like there's coffee in there. And my husband was like, I don't taste it. And I was like, I'm betting you there's coffee in there. And he's like, no, no, no. So I asked the server, I was like, is there coffee in this filling? And he said, I'm not sure, but I'll ask in the kitchen. And he asked, and there was espresso in there. So if I were going to try to recreate that at home, maybe I don't know how to make a cannoli filling, but I could look one up. I could add a little bit of espresso, and I know that it had a waffle cone kind of instead of a regular cannoli shell. So, you can kind of like play with ideas like that together. Um, Sometimes they'll give you, like, if you ask, like, hey, how do you make this? Whatever, they might, or like, what do you put in this? They might give you a list of ingredients. Um, I I often will take a picture of the menu at a restaurant. So if there's like a salad or a pasta dish or whatever that cocktails, I do it with a lot. It'll kind of list at least the main ingredients so you have like a starting point. Um,
That's a great idea. You're
yeah.
absolutely right. I was thinking, like, when from at a pizza shop, sometimes you
Mhm.
go to these really great pizza restaurants and they have all these really unique pizzas, and I'm like, I'm gonna make that at home, and I never remember what
Yeah.
was on it. And I hate to say that in the day at this digital age, that it didn't occur to me to actually take a picture of
Oh
the menu.
yeah. I do that. I mean, part of the reason I do it is because I a lot of times I'll post later like on Instagram, be like, "Oh, I enjoyed this whatever cocktail," and then I list out what the ingredients are or this salad and it says like, candied pecans, apples, blue cheese, grilled chicken, whatever. Um there was a grain salad that I had at a restaurant and the I ordered it because the ingredient combination sounded weird and it worked so well. So I like kind of had some similar ingredients at home and I tried to recreate it and I didn't get it exactly, but I got it close enough to kind of, you know, satisfy the craving. Um so back to the balsamic vinaigrette. I don't know how they got a creamy texture, but I always have Greek yogurt at home. So I experimented with that and I know you can kind of make an emulsification using Greek yogurt. Um so you can always, I started with a little bit and you can add more until you get the texture that you're looking for. And also, you don't always have to make like a giant batch. Like I don't need to do a full bottle's worth of creamy balsamic vinaigrette. Maybe I'll start with a little bit just to get the proportions right and then you can scale it later.
That's a good way to do it. Sometimes I think I'm like, oh, I need to do all out, but I really don't. I just need to do
Mhm.
one or two
Yeah.
servings to kind of feel it out.
Yeah. I think that if you're sometimes it's hard the first time you go somewhere and have something that you love. You might not have been paying close enough attention to be able to recreate it later on. But like the same place with the vinaigrette, they make a broccoli rabe that's super garlicky, and I noticed like the color of the broccoli rabe wasn't super bright green. It was like a little more dull, and I saw that there was garlic chips on it, so I kind of played with that at home until I got it to a place that seemed comparable. There used to be a tea house that had these turkey salad sandwiches my mom loved. Whenever she would visit, we would go there, and they had dried cranberries in it. So I would, like, I knew she loved it, I loved it, and when I would go there and I would try to pay attention and maybe make some notes, just like, oh, I noticed there's something crunchy in there, or I noticed there's like a lot of maybe there's a lot of cranberries or just a little bit of cranberries, or the crusts were cut off, just like making little notes like that in your phone or on a, notebook or whatever is really great. And it's especially nice for like, sadly, when restaurants go away or when they discontinue a menu item. Like there was some espresso brownies from Starbucks that I loved back right after I got out of college when I worked there. I really liked them, and they cut them into triangles, and they discontinued them. And so I, had a brownie that I liked, and I figured out how to add some espresso into it. I knew it had chocolate chips. For whatever reason, it tastes better cut into triangles in this particular recipe. So just having having those notes. And I mean, for me, the goal is to be able to enjoy it without necessarily having to go out and spend the money, because you can't always do that. And, you can always switch things up. You can, oh, I like it like this, but oh, I wonder what it would be like with white chocolate chips, or maybe like the flavors from the tea salad sandwich or turkey salad tea sandwich might be good, but like on a regular salad, maybe some grilled turkey and some, like just kind of switching it into a different format too. So it can always kind of start something different.
Curious about your family's roots? Wondering who paved the way for you? Delving into your family history is like embarking on a thrilling adventure, but taking those initial steps can feel quite daunting. Are You My Cousin is your one-stop hub for tools, resources, and information to find your ancestors and uncover their stories. Dive into a treasure trove of helpful articles and captivating tutorials full of my favorite tips and strategies to decode your family's past. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just dipping your toes into the waters of genealogy, Are You My Cousin equips you to unearth the captivating tales of your ancestors. Let me help you start finding your ancestors with the Big Genie List, a free guide that I've created full of my favorite websites and resources to help you grow your family tree. To download your copy of the Big Genie List, head to lisalisten.com/biggenie.
I just kind of keep a running list of recipe ideas or inspiration, and sometimes I won't even be necessarily trying to recreate the recipe, but maybe they did something really interesting with plating. There's just so many ways you can be inspired by stuff like that.
I like that. I was thinking actually of almost puzzle pieces when you were talking about early about observing and the taste and trying this one and try adding a little bit to that turkey salad tea sandwich, whether it was adding the cranberries or trying the Starbucks brownie copycat recipe where maybe try it with white chocolate, but kind of as you're thinking through those recipes and analyze it sounds a little bit like when I'm actually on the trail of researching an ancestor and I'm finding all these pieces and I'm like, how can I fit them in the puzzle to get the right answer?
Yeah.
And essentially I think that's what you're doing here with the food as well. So it's kind of always kind of solving that puzzle.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, there's
I'm always, looking for interesting flavor combinations too. Like if there's something that I haven't tried before on a menu, like maybe I'll try that. Like there was a South African restaurant that I went to with my husband years ago, and they had a dessert that had passion fruit and chocolate. And I was like, I'd never had that together, and it was so good. And it's like, now it's one of my favorite flavor combinations. Kind of different than like a recipe, but recreating something that you would normally buy. We've talked about spice blends before. Uh, if you have a favorite spice blend, you can look on the back of the package of the jar. It'll list the ingredients. Um, and this isn't just with spice blends, but it's got to list whatever ingredient is the highest quantity at the top down to the lowest quantity. So if you find something and it lists oregano, then parsley, then salt, then sage, you know that there's the most oregano, the highest quantity of oregano, and then, down from there. So you can kind of start playing around with those ratios and taste it and see how it's matching up to what you're used to.
It's quite a creative process.
Yeah, it's fun.
Really.
And if it's something you really enjoy at a restaurant, go back to the restaurant and have it again. And while you're enjoying it, sit there and think like, okay, I'm really noticing there's a guava cooler cocktail recipe that we really like from a local restaurant. And I'm like, it's really got a lot of guava, but there's also like lime or whatever. But getting that balance right sometimes can be a little tricky. So you got to do a little A/B testing, make a couple batches. And like with cocktails, especially, I was talking about tweaking recipes to make them more to your, whatever your needs are. I always like to try to play around with a mocktail version. So if I don't feel like having alcohol, or I want my son to be able to enjoy it, or friends who don't, you don't always want tequila, but like, can you still make it good, make it more interesting, but still honor that original flavor?
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Well, we hope this episode has inspired you to try to recreate some of your favorite restaurant dishes at home. You can find the show notes for this episode at passingtheplate.org/56.
That's a wrap on this episode of Passing the Plate. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of food, traditions, and the amazing connections they create.
It's been a pleasure sharing these stories and flavors with you. Remember, food is more than just sustenance. It's a way to connect with our past, present, and future.
So keep sharing your meals, keep passing those plates, and keep creating memories that will last a lifetime. Head to passingtheplate.org/podcast for show notes.